Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to discuss my top 10 favorite games designed by women, by female designers. This is a question that came up in actually my old post about my top 10 favorite designers of all time, and someone recently commented and said, Jamie, do you even have any female designers that you really like? And I listed a ton of games that I loved and that I still love by female designers. And so I wanted to share them today in a top 10 list. And I will say, I am the publisher of a game called Wingspan, designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. This would be my probably number one or number two game on this list. I really do. You'll see what my number one is. I've mentioned it many times. But I love this game. Truly love it. I continue to love it and play it to this day. Elizabeth Hargrave is brilliant. And I'm very fortunate to work with her. But this is a list. I don't include Stonemaier games on these lists, on these ranked lists. So Wingspan isn't eligible for this list. Also, if you're thrown off by the cover here, this is a digitally printed cover, a special copy of Wingspan that I have. So you don't have the wrong cover if you don't have this bird. There's only one of this bird. So anyway, Wingspan would be on this list by Elizabeth Hargrave, but it's not eligible because I publish it. So my number 10 game on this list is Qwirkle. Qwirkle is an abstract game where you're placing different shapes, not on a board at all, but just on the plain surface. It's actually been a little while since I played Qwirkle. It's not a game that I own, but I had a great experience the first time I played it, which was outside at a park. It was one of these games that you can play outside if you have at least a somewhat flat plain surface. And it is designed by Suzanne McKinley Ross. It's a really, really brilliant abstract game that I really enjoy. Number 9 is a game that I played a little bit more often and really enjoy, and that is Cryptid by Ruth Veevers. Cryptid is just a brilliant deduction game in that every player, you put out this board on a certain layout, and every player knows one thing, one clue, one rule about where the monster. Oh, it's been a little since I played this one too, but I believe it's where the monster is. So there's one monster hidden somewhere on the board on a very specific space on the board. And it's a competitive game, so using these combinations of clues, every player knows something different than other players. You are asking other players, typically most turns in the game you're saying, okay, is the monster here? Could the monster be here? And you're pointing to a specific territory type on the map, or maybe it's a few spaces away from a certain type of token on the board. And the other player, using their information that you don't have, has to answer honestly and tell you, yes, the monster could be there, or no, the monster couldn't be there based on their rule. There's an element of bluffing too in that the questions that you're asking might mislead players a little bit based on, because they're trying to figure out what rule you know that they don't know, so they can narrow down the one exact spot on the board where the monster is. It's one of these games that you kind of have to play to fully understand it, but you might be able to watch a playthrough to see what I'm talking about. But it's an incredible game in that even though it sounds not very replayable, there are tons of rules and tons of combinations of rules and board configurations that make it extremely replayable. Ruth has done a fantastic job of calculating every board so that the monster only appears in exactly one spot on each board layout with each rule combination. Brilliant game, Cryptid, at my number 9 slot. At number 8 is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, the very original version of which was, I believe, co-designed by Suzanne Goldberg. I have played I think the more recent edition of this game, and it's kind of another deduction game a little bit, where you are solving a mystery, and you're trying to race Sherlock Holmes in terms of how well and how fast you can solve that mystery in comparison to Sherlock Holmes. The storytelling in this game is brilliant, and I particularly love the freedom that players have and the components that are added to that freedom. So for example, there is a newspaper associated with every episode. So that day's newspaper is associated with that day's scenario, that day's mystery to solve. And you can use that newspaper to get clues as to what's happening. But the game doesn't say, hey, look at this section of the newspaper or this section. It's just that day's paper, and you have to kind of read through it and figure out what you want to contribute to the discussion. And you can use the things in the newspaper or the other clues that you've been given to decide entirely freely where on the map of London you want to go. You can just say, okay, there was a long hair found at the mystery scene. Let's go check out the horse stables over here in this section of the map. And then you go to the horse stables and you read a section of the book that maybe says nothing, or maybe it says you found something, and it gives you a passage as to what you found. So you're really using actual deduction, actual intuition as you are looking through these clues and looking at the map and reading through the storybook. Brilliant game, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, designed by Suzanne Goldberg. My number 7 game on this list is kind of a similar game to that as well, but not with deduction, and that is Legacy of Dragonholt, co-designed by Nikki Valens. This is another game with a storybook, a number of storybooks actually, and the story is written beautifully in this game. I love the storytelling in this game. And it's a unique game on this list in that you really don't need a tabletop surface at all. You need the books, and every now and then you probably need to refer to the map of the town, because at the beginning of every day you start in the town and you can visit different places in the town, but time passes if you do that, so you kind of have to decide, okay, how long am I going to wait before I actually go on this adventure? And if you wait too long, there are real consequences in this game, because every now and then the game will say, check off a time. You have moved forward in the day. It is now this time, and if you wait too long, as I have done in one of the scenarios, to solve the problem, major consequences can happen. So I love the consequences. I love the story. I love the use of time, and I also love the character building in this game. Oh, and one other thing I love about this game. This is a game that I mentioned on a list of travel games because you don't need a tabletop surface. You can play it easily while you're traveling, and even on road trips. If you have someone who has the game in the car who's not driving, they can read from the storybook while everyone else participates in the discussion, and there's no dice rolling or anything like that. You just use your decision making and your different combination of characters and their skills to get different options and decide where you want to go next in the storybook. Awesome game. That's Legacy of Dragonholt by Nikki Valens. My number 6 game on this list is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Many of the expansions of which are designed by Kara Centell-Dunk. And I wanted to include this on this list because I almost didn't play Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition after my first experience with the core game. I applaud the core designer for designing the core game, but it didn't hit home with me because it was very much combat based, and I don't love dungeon crawl games that are just combat based. However, many of the expansions aren't combat based. There's a little bit of combat maybe here and there, but most of it is you are solving these weird things or learning about these weird things that are happening in a mansion. And it's just, I love all the mechanisms that go into that. And especially the idea that it is a dungeon crawl game where you're not just running into a room and fighting all this stuff. You are moving strategically through these different rooms, interacting with different people and characters, and encountering these weird things that happen that you have to figure out what's going on. My favorite scenario, I actually don't know if this one's designed by Kara, but my favorite scenario involves one where rooms appear and disappear from time to time. It really feels like you're in a scary movie where stuff is happening. And you don't exactly know what is happening. So I really, really love the expansions to Mansions of Madness, and I associate them so much with my experience of the game that I wanted to include it on this list. So that's number 6 on this list. Number 5 on this list is Escape Room in a Box, and this is one of the first. So I haven't played this version of Escape Room in a Box Flashback yet, but the first one in the series, the Werewolf Experiment, I believe, designed by Julianna, Patel, and Ariel Rubin, 2 designers who I've had the pleasure of meeting. Wonderful people. Get to meet them when I went out to LA to attend one of the Survivor finales, one of my favorite TV shows. They are fans of the show as well, but they are incredible escape room designers. And they design escape rooms, but also these escape room in a box games. So I really need to play this one. I'm a little ashamed that it's still in print and shrink there. But the Werewolf Experiment specifically was the best escape room in a box experience that I've ever had. It was just some of the components they put in this game in the Kickstarter version of it, and I think many ended up in the mass market version as well. just kind of blew my mind that they thought to include these components. They are absolutely incredible. I obviously don't want to spoil anything here, but it was like we were in a real escape room, like a big budget real escape room, because of some of the components they put into this game. Absolutely incredible. So Escape Room in a Box, I had to include it on this list because I just had a wonderful experience with that, and I do look forward to playing Flashback here. That's number 5 on this list. My number 4 and number 3 are actually from the same designer. I thought about consolidating them, but they are very different games, and I enjoy them for very different reasons, and I need to include them both on this list. And that is, the number 4 is The Rise of Queensdale by Inka Brand, co-designed with her husband Marcus Brand. The Rise of Queensdale is one of my favorite legacy game experiences ever. And I went into it kind of, well, excited because it was a village building legacy game like Charterstone is, but also curious, like, am I going to like this? Is it going to be all that different from Charterstone? And sure enough, it was, even though it is a village building legacy game, where every player has their own little area that they are kind of in charge of, the game plays out very differently than Charterstone. I love it because the core mechanisms are really solid. Like the things that you're doing every game are it's just solid Euro game design, but also just the little twists, some of which are silly, some of which are have huge consequences, are just a lot of fun in The Rise of Queensdale. I had a blast with it. I would definitely put it in my top 3 favorite legacy games ever. And I highly recommend it, especially if you like Charterstone. I highly recommend The Rise of Queensdale. My number 3 game is also by Inka Brand, and that is Rajas of the Ganges. This is an incredible game, an incredible Euro game, another Euro game, where you are using dice as resources. So it's a worker placement game, but you're using these dice as resources to mainly build up your player map. There's a bunch of different actions, including a one-way action selection track or bonus selection track. I love those one-way tracks. That's one of my favorite mechanisms, but it also includes this board that you're building. You can kind of see it on the box here. This board that you're building out of tiles that unlock these one-time bonuses and create paths to back to your I forget the building, your main building, your castle. And as you place them, you get bonuses. You could also trigger bonuses on these tiles. It's just one of these very rewarding games. I love games that reward you in a multitude of different ways as you play, and this is definitely one of them. And it also includes an awesome mechanism in that you have fame and money. These are these tracks that go around the board in opposite directions. And the way you win the game is by having your money, which goes around the board, I believe, counterclockwise, have that token on the same spot or beyond your fame token, which goes the other way. So you can play a strategy in this game where you focus mostly on fame, and your fame might move forward really fast, and then you just need a little bit of money to cross over. Or you might have a big money strategy where you move across the board, across the money track, and just have the fame cross over a little bit. But you can, it leads to, it's basically 2 very different types of victory points that you can gain, and both are relevant because all you're trying to do is cross the paths of these tracks that go around the board. If that sounds abstract to you, try watching a video about it because it is a really, really cool mechanism that I really enjoy. Rajas of the Ganges by Inka Brand and Marcus Brand. And I do want to mention 2 other games that I really enjoy or 2 other kind of products by Inka Brand that I really enjoy. One is La Boca, fantastic game. I won't go into details here, but I really do love La Boca. It would have been an honorable mention on this list. And Orleans Invasion is a really, really great cooperative expansion to Orleans that they also designed. They aren't the designers of Orleans, but they are the designers of Invasion. My number 2 favorite game on this list is a classic. The designer's name, unfortunately, isn't even on the box, but Scotland Yard. It was originally designed by Dorothy Garrels. This is my favorite hidden movement game, one of my favorite games ever. This is my childhood copy, but it holds up. It's that good that it still holds up. I am still excited to play today, whether I am the devious Mr. X who is trying to secretly move around the board and avoid all the detectives, or if I am the detective working together with the other players trying to find where Mr. X is. And the thing that I always mention about this game that I really love is, so you have this the board here that shows that every few spaces, so basically every few turns, Mr. X has to show exactly where he or she is. they have to reveal their position, which is the thing that I struggle with a lot of these hidden movement games. I feel like I'm just walking around in the dark for a long time if I'm not playing as the character who is moving around hidden. But in Scotland Yard, you know within 3 turns exactly where Mr. X is, and then he or she disappears, and you gotta go find them, and then they appear a few turns later. So I love that you have the information you need, really, and you can coordinate with the other players to try to find Mr. X and kind of lock him or her down in this map of London. It's an awesome game. It's a fantastic game. It really holds up the test of time. And if you like hidden movement, this is hidden movement distilled down to its core elements and what they really, in my opinion, need to be in a hidden movement game. I love that, Scotland Yard, my number 2. My number 1 game is one of my favorite games of all time. This is the one that honestly competes with Wingspan a little bit as my favorite on this list, and that is Time Stories, which the original version of it was co-designed, I believe, by Peggy Chassenet. I might be mispronouncing that name. The expansions are designed by a variety of people. Here's the one that I have right now that I haven't opened yet. I'm really excited to get to this weekend, hopefully. This is a Midsummer Night. This is one of the standalone versions of Time Stories. But the original version, the core game that I had so much fun with, that I fell in love with across all 8 modules, was designed by Peggy. And it is a wonderful game. I won't go into too many details because unless you're new to this channel, you probably have heard me talk about Time Stories many times. But the core idea in Time Stories, a fully cooperative game where you basically walk into a room or an environment or a location with other players, and you see with your eyes a panorama of cards showing you in a first-person point of view what you are seeing there. And then you kind of decide, you use your actual eyes to decide where you want to go and what you want to do at that location. And you flip over those cards. Or basically, like if I go to a certain space on that location, I take that card and I alone flip it over and look at the back side and read the text to myself. I look at an image on the back by myself, and then I have to put the card back and gather together with the other players and say, okay, this is what I learned from this card. You can't read the card out to the other players, and you can't show them what you saw. You have to actually use the information you saw to share with other players. And I love this. I love how realistic that feels as you are exploring and learning this information and sharing it with other players. I love Time Stories. I'm so grateful that Peggy designed it. And really, I'm so grateful for all these games. These are wonderful, wonderful games. And I am just excited about how diverse the game design community is becoming, and hopefully will continue to become, thanks to many of these wonderful female designers, these women designers who have designed some incredible games that I truly love. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What are some of your favorite games on this list? Oh, and I wanted to mention some honorable mentions here before I forget. Chai by Connie Kazmaier, Point Salad by Molly Johnson, and Visitor in Blackwood Grove, Mary Flanagan. Really hard to not include these games on this list because I really enjoy all 3 of those games as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you have some favorites among these games that I mentioned, or other games that were designed by women that you really enjoy as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks!